Hey everyone, Mr. Harvey here. Let's get started with our lecture today. We are on chapter 18, ladies and gentlemen, and we are focusing on World War I. Now, in the previous lecture, ladies and gentlemen, we focused on the causes to the war, to World War I, and then I gave you a little bit of background and some of the context to the buildup to World War I, ladies and gentlemen. In today's lecture, I want to focus on the war itself. We're going to be talking about both sides, who was fighting one another, the major figures, who led their countries, the weapons that we're going to be seeing, and we're going to be talking about the theaters of war and what was going on in the war itself. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So let's get started. Okay. So here are the combatants. Here are the two sides. We got a little explosion right there, ladies and gentlemen. And we are going to see the Allies versus the Central Powers. Okay, we have Britain, France, Russia, and Italy. Italy will join the Allied powers. They're not going to honor that triple alliance. Very important to understand. And then we have the Central Powers. Okay, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottomans. Very important that both sides are kind of made up of those original alliances that I just kind of referenced right there with Italy. That was really important for us in understanding the causes of the war. Okay, so the Allies predominantly made up of the Triple Entente. That's going to be plus Italy, and then eventually the United States will join the Allies. And then the Central Powers predominantly made up of that Triple Alliance that originally had Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. What we know, Italy is going to join the Allied powers, but the Central Powers will then add the Ottomans. The Ottomans will come in on the side of Austria-Hungary and Germany. So these are our two sides, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, here are the major leaders. We have George V. We have Poincaré of France, Nicholas II, Victor Emmanuel of Italy, all right, Wilhelm of Germany, Franz Joseph of Austria-Hungary, and Pasha of Turkey. Now, really important to understand that a lot of these leaders knew each other and were very familiar with one another. And actually, some of them were related to one another. Wilhelm and Nicholas were actually cousins, ladies and gentlemen. And in the lead up to the war, ladies and gentlemen, when the tension was high, when it looked like war was inevitable, Wilhelm and Nicholas, and we're gonna talk about this in class, ladies and gentlemen, were actually telegramming one another back and forth, and using their childhood nicknames to kind of make this connection with one another. Nicholas was calling Wilhelm Willie, and Wilhelm was calling Nicholas Nicky, and they knew one another. They were very familiar with one another, and they were really trying to control the situation and appeal to each other in their relationship, but that is not going to work, and we are going to see the war break out. But a very interesting fact that some of these leaders were related to one another. Okay, but here is the battleground. Here is what the scene looks like in Europe, ladies and gentlemen. We have the Allies, okay, the major countries, Britain, France, Italy, and Russia, ladies and gentlemen, and then we have the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottomans. And you can see from this map, ladies and gentlemen, that Austria, but especially Germany, fighting a two-front war. And remember, for Germany, that was the nightmare of Bismarck. Bismarck never wanted that, but as we know, Wilhelm II took control of the country, took control of foreign affairs, and really put Germany in a bad position. But this is going to be the battleground, and Germany is going to, and that's going to facilitate their loss. That is going to be a reason why Germany loses, is fighting this two-front war. It is really going to stretch them thin, and they just will not be able to overcome this. Okay, but this is the battleground. All right, so we have the Central Powers, ladies and gentlemen. Kind of just reviewed that. We have the Triple Alliance minus Italy plus the Ottoman Empire, and then we have the Allies, the Triple Entente plus Italy, and then eventually the United States will join the Allies, okay? So the Central Powers and the Allies, okay? And when the war broke out, ladies and gentlemen, it brought a lot of excitement to Europe. There had been no major war in over 50 years, okay? And really no major war, ladies and gentlemen, involving all the major European countries fighting within this war since the times of Napoleon. And so this was great excitement. People thought this would be a quick war. They thought it would be over relatively soon. But they did not have an understanding of the weaponry, of this modern warfare that we are going to see. They did not understand that. And quickly will they realize in some of these battles just how much the weaponry has advanced, but how little their tactics have advanced, and just how terrible modern warfare is. The Allies had an advantage in numbers and money, but the Central Powers had an advantage in that they had internal lines of communication as they were located close together, and they are going to attack first. Okay, they are going to throw the first punch within this war and really try to knock the Allies out quickly. Okay, but we will see that not work. Okay, so the mobilization, we're going to see both sides mobilize. The young men are going to flock in these different countries to sign up, singing songs in the streets. They thought they were going to be home by Christmas. There was so much pride in each of these countries. There was a lot of nationalism during this time. And so we are going to see this mobilization bring about great excitement. However, little did they know that this was going to be a long war, a bloody war, a tragic war, and there was going to be tremendous slaughter throughout the world with this war. They did not know what was about to happen. Okay? And one of the reasons why we're going to see such a tragedy with this war, ladies and gentlemen, is the weaponry, the new weapons that we are going to be seeing. And this represents, ladies and gentlemen, the Industrial Revolution applied to warfare, the mechanization of warfare. There have been massive advancements in the world. There's going to be massive advancements in weaponry and warfare. And perhaps the biggest weapon that is going to have the most tremendous impact on the war, in my opinion, will be the machine gun. This is going to be a devastating weapon. And the weapon that really we're going to see the old tactics not be able to account for. We're going to still see those tactics of mass charges, trying to overwhelm the other side with numbers and a volume of soldiers. That's not going to work with the machine gun, because you can have machine guns lined up in defensive positions, and if you keep charging people, well, those machine guns are just going to be able to shoot them all down and kill them. And that's going to be one of the reasons why we're going to see such staggering and catastrophic casualties in this war, is the old tactics simply aren't adapted for some of these new weapons. And so the machine gun is going to give the defense an advantage initially in this war. We'll see that. We'll see some counters to the machine gun, and that's going to facilitate some of the stalemate and the stalemate nature of the war, especially on the Western Front. Okay, so the machine gun. We're going to see submarines, U-boats. They're called U-boats because they're called undersea boats. A brand new weapon, ladies and gentlemen. These are boats that can go under the water that you can't see, and the Germans are going to be using this to a devastating effect against the British. Okay, the British, they're shipping and to attack the British Navy. This is also going to be a reason for the inclusion of the United States into the war, which we will talk about. We're going to see early tanks. This is going to be developed a little bit later in the war, ladies and gentlemen, but we're going to see the earliest versions of tanks, and this was developed and designed as a kryptonite, kind of a counter to the machine gun, something that could go onto the battlefield and could shield the soldiers against the machine gun fire, and also something that these tanks are going to have a gun on them that can fire. Okay, poison gas. We're going to see poison gas, and that's going to require soldiers to use gas masks. We're going to see Zeppelins. These are blimps. These are going to be used as early bombers to bomb civilian areas. We're going to see airplanes, ladies and gentlemen. Initially, they were used for scouting purposes to scout troop movements. But eventually we're going to see the differing countries, the fighting countries, put weapons on them, machine guns, and then also arm them with bombs. And the radio, ladies and gentlemen, a way to communicate. All right, and the Germans are going to use this to a devastating effect, especially on the Eastern Front when they are fighting the Russians. The Germans are going to use this, and this will just allow for quicker communication and quicker troop movement. All right, so here are some pictures. All right, poison gas, that's going to require gas masks. You can see the machine guns, okay, and you can see some of these soldiers wearing gas masks with their machine gun. Early tanks, okay, here's a picture of an early tank. Here is another tank. This is a French tank. All right, the earliest airplanes. All right, and during this time, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to see the development of the flying ace. These fighter pilots who are going to be very much kind of romanticized and who are known as an ace because they are really good pilots and they are good at shooting down the enemy. So we're going to see the development of the flying ace in World War I. All right, here's a picture of a Zeppelin, one of those blimps. The Zeppelin is going to be a technology that quickly is outdated with the airplane. It's very slow, full of flammable gas, and so if it is shot at, it can easily blow up and be destroyed. So we're going to see the Zeppelins kind of exist until the airplanes are going to be armed and be able to kind of shoot them down. All right. The U-boat, okay, the submarines, all right, the Germans, this is going to be definitely a weapon that the Germans used to counter the British, and as you can see with this picture right here, their goal was to really surround the British Isles with U-boats to cut off their supplies, as Great Britain's an island. They rely on their navy and their shipping to supply them with raw materials, right? And so this was the German counter to Great Britain, and they are going to use it very well. All right, let's talk about the conduct of this war, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, I've shown a map similar. We are going to see multiple fronts. We have the Eastern Front right here and the Western Front right here, ladies and gentlemen. So let's kind of talk about how the war progresses, okay? And on the Western Front, this is what we're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, is a war of attrition, all right? And I want to talk about kind of the German plan and what happens on this Western Front. We are going to see some serious carnage on the Western Front. Okay, serious fighting on the Western Front. All right, so let's talk about that. And Germany has a plan for the Western Front, and it is called the Schlieffen Plan, ladies and gentlemen. And this was the plan. Okay, it was based on the ideas of Count Alfred von Schlieffen. All right, and their goal was to kind of fake out the French. They wanted to outflank them, kind of go behind their forces, all right? So they're going to actually not attack through France directly, but wheel around France, attack through Belgium, and then kind of wheel their forces once they defeat the French to head east towards the Eastern Front. So they were really trying to throw a knockout blow to France really quickly, and then bring the majority of their forces east to then defeat the Russians, okay? And we're going to kind of take a look at how this goes down. But this was really risky, okay? It was risky because it weakens the East dramatically. They can't put as many troops on the East to fight the Russians, and it's going to get Great Britain involved because the Germans were going to invade Belgium. So a very risky plan, ladies and gentlemen, all right? And it's going to fail by a narrow margin because the French are going to stop the Schlieffen Plan with the First Battle of the Marne, okay? And let me show you all a picture of how it goes down. So this is kind of Germany's plan right here, all right? They're not necessarily going to attack right through France directly. They're going to try to fake them out, go through Belgium, conquer France, take Paris, and then wheel around and head east. Okay, head east. All right. So the major battle, and there's a couple of reasons why the Schlieffen Plan is going to fail, ladies and gentlemen. There's a couple of reasons. Number one is that Russia's going to mobilize quicker. So the German military is going to have to take a couple divisions and bring them east because Russia mobilizes a little bit quicker than the Germans thought. And the Belgians slowed the Germans down quite a bit, and that allowed time for the French to kind of gather a plan to stop the German advance. Okay, so a couple reasons of why that's going to fail. All right, so the British and French are going to stop this German advance with the First Battle of the Marne, and we're going to see they're going to be required to bring French soldiers from Paris to the front. And it's going to facilitate this the stalemate, the trench warfare for 4 years that we're going to be seeing. The German army is going to be stopped at this First Battle of the Marne. And so this is quickly going to become a battle of attrition as we are going to start to see trench warfare kind of start. And these trenches are going to go all the way from Switzerland all the way to the coast. Okay. And we'll take a look at that. Let me show you all a map really quickly. So we're going to start to see, once it stopped, we're going to see trenches go all the way from the coast all the way to Switzerland. And we're going to see two sides of trenches, kind of the German trenches and then the French trenches. And they're just going to be trying to take these trenches. And it's going to lead to a really stagnant war. There's not going to be a lot of movement. And both sides really can't break out. And the reason is because the machine gun that defense has, it's hard to take territory. It's going to be hard to take over the other side's trenches because of that machine gun. Okay, all right, let's continue. So, trench warfare. So this is what's we're going to see these trenches develop on both sides. Okay, it's this very intricate assortment of trenches, and this is where the soldiers are going to live and fight in and die in, and these are going to be awful conditions for the soldiers, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, now across from the different trenches, you had no man's land. Okay, no man's land, and that was simply because the saying is that a lot of people couldn't survive that. Really, no man could survive no man's land. And let me go back to those pictures. So you say you have this is a trench right here from the French or the British. You had no man's land, and then on the other side of that would be the enemy trenches. So no man's land is where you have to cross in order to get to the other side, but it was no man's land. Okay, and as you can see, this was just an area that was devastated. Okay, and it was no man could live in this area, and pretty much no man could survive in this area. Okay, or else because you would be shot and killed. All right, and so this war, ladies and gentlemen, was awful. The conditions, ladies and gentlemen, were awful. The soldiers, they had hope for a quick war, quickly realized that it was not going to happen. And the casualties, ladies and gentlemen, that we are going to see in some of these opening battles will be staggering. Staggering. Thousands will die within minutes as they charge to the other side of the trench. And this is with the advanced weapons and those old tactics. The charge with no protection simply doesn't work against hundreds of machine guns. It's just not going to work. And so we will see absolute slaughter in these in the opening throughout this war. But it is simply because of these weapons and these old tactics, ladies and gentlemen. So let's talk about some of the major battles we're going to see on the Western Front. We're going to see the Battle of Verdun, the Battle of Somme. The Battle of Verdun was a battle that the Germans will initiate, and they simply were just their whole initiative really wasn't to take land. They knew that Verdun was a place that was of importance to France, and they simply wanted to have the French defend that, and they just wanted to kill as many French as possible and bleed France. And we're going to see, in response to that, the Battle of the Somme, and this was initiated in 1916 after Verdun had started to try to ease the German attack in Verdun, to try to give some help to the French. This is a combined British and French attack, and it's going to lead to a great loss of life. The Battle of the Somme, the very first day of the Battle of the Somme, is the worst day in British military history. There's conflicting reports, but I believe estimates of the loss of soldiers are somewhere between 60,000 and the very first day for the British. 60,000 soldiers. And you would see in these battles, Verdun and Somme, entire neighborhoods of men wiped out and gone completely. And we will see that, especially in the 1920s and 1930s. You will see, and we're going to talk about the lost generation, but entire neighborhoods of young men gone. The casualties will be enormous. Hundreds of thousands will die in these battles with these new weapons. Okay, so this idea of the excitement of going off to war, it quickly disappears as they realize how awful this war is. Okay, and these battles will be terrible. Let's continue. Here we can see Verdun. This was the German offensive, and each side had 500,000 die. To give you some perspective, ladies and gentlemen, in World War II, the United States total throughout the entire war lost 400,000 people. In this battle alone, each side lost 500,000 people. Terrible, just terrible. Picture of the Somme. Yes, the British lost 60,000 in one day. And over 1 million will be killed total in 5 months. Just terrible, terrible, terrible casualties in these battles. Okay, and you can kind of see with this map right here the fighting. And as you can see, they're not fighting over a lot of territory, and that is that defensive nature of the war. It's the machine gun. They can't move. If you're going to launch a massive attack, you're going to lose massive amounts of people. And simply, we're going to start to see both sides, this war of attrition, both sides are quickly going to start to run out of people. Okay? And that's going to be a reason why the Germans will lose. Let's talk about the Eastern Front, ladies and gentlemen. All right? We are going to see General Hindenburg and Ludendorff. Very important to remember these names, ladies and gentlemen, as they're going to play an important role in the politics that we will see after World War I ends. But they are going to annihilate the Russian armies at Mazarine Lakes and Tannenberg. And some of the reasons why, ladies and gentlemen, are reasons that we have talked about. Okay, the Russians are going to be very poorly organized and poorly equipped. They simply don't have the technology, the radio, and the weaponry that the Germans do. And these are going to be decisive wins for the Germans, decisive losses for the Russians, and these losses are going to be key, ladies and gentlemen, in us understanding the rise of the Soviet Union and the Russian Revolution. There will be a revolution going on in World War I in Russia, ladies and gentlemen, and this is going to be one of the reasons why that revolution is going to take off so quickly, is the terrible defeats for the Russians in World War I, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, and we are going to see eventually the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, where Lenin takes Russia, as we see the Bolsheviks take charge. Lenin is going to sign with Germany to get Russia out of the war, all right, on the Eastern Front. So Russia is going to get knocked out of the war, ladies and gentlemen, eventually, but it will be too late for Germany. And we will talk about that later. And as we know, Italy will join the Allies. Let's move on. We're going to see fighting in the Middle East, ladies and gentlemen. We will see fighting in Palestine. We will see fighting around Turkey and the Ottoman Empire. An important figure within this fighting is T.E. Lawrence of Arabia, and he is going to lead the British campaign here to fight the Turks and the Ottomans. And Lawrence is going to try to rally the Arabs to fight the Turks. All right. Yes, and he is going to lead tremendous British victories in the Middle East to weaken the Turks, gain the support of the Arab tribes who resented the Ottoman Empire. But we will see, ladies and gentlemen, and very important for us to understand, that the British will not fulfill all the promises that they make to the Arab tribes after World War I. And we will be talking about that with the mandate system and what happens to the Middle East after World War I. But there will be some serious fighting in the Middle East. All right. We will also see fighting in Asia, and we will see Japan, honor an alliance with Great Britain and enter the war. And they are going to overrun colonies in China and Pacific. Oh, that shouldn't say Pacifica, but it should say the Pacific. And they're going to use this opportunity to put pressure on China. And Japan will also be taking control of many of the colonies that Germany has in the Pacific, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we're also going to see fighting in the colonies in Africa, in Asia, like I said. There's going to be fighting all around the colonies during World War I, and it's truly going to be a world war, ladies and gentlemen. Very important for us. So we can see fighting in Greece, all right? We have some of the colonial infantry, all right, from China, all right? We have soldiers, British soldiers in India. We see some of the fighting in Africa. So truly, ladies and gentlemen, very important for us to understand, truly a world war. Okay, truly a world war. All right. Now, there's going to be a lot of fighting in the sea as well, in the oceans. And Great Britain and the Allies were trying to impose a blockade to starve out the Central Powers. And Germany is going to respond with unrestricted submarine warfare, ladies and gentlemen, and declare the British Isles a war zone. Very important for a couple reasons. Number one, it's going to be very unwelcome to neutral countries like the United States, this unrestricted submarine warfare. And we're going to see Germany torpedo a British cruise liner, the Lusitania, that which will really anger the United States, because there were United States civilians on that cruise liner. And that's gonna, and this unrestricted warfare, the sinking of the Lusitania, is going to be some of the key reasons of why the United States is going to join the war. Now, really important, I just want to make a quick note, ladies and gentlemen, is there's a little bit of a misconception of the United States and World War I. A lot of people believe that the United States was a heavy player within World War I. Well, they were and they weren't. The United States doesn't join World War I until much later in the war. But the United States will be a key reason why the war ends, ladies and gentlemen. Because of their industrial power and all the manpower that they're going to be bringing. Germany just simply is going to be overwhelmed. But important to understand that the United States does not join the war immediately and not until really relatively late in the war. Okay, but unrestricted submarine warfare, the sinking of the Lusitania, key reasons of why the United States is going to join World War I. Okay, let's stop there for today, ladies and gentlemen. In the next couple lectures, I'm going to talk about the home front, and we are going to talk more about the conduct of the war and what goes on. Okay, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.